to with regard to this presentation. So, all right. So we've got some parents, some job seekers, advocates, parents. Okay, yeah. Good, good, okay. Yes, I am the parent of a college student as well. So, all right, well, thank you so much for sharing that with me, just to give me a sense of who's here. I really appreciate it. So, in this presentation, what I'm going to be doing is sharing something that might be a slightly different approach to getting a job, and some of the help and support that's available that people may not be aware of, because the projects that I'm involved in are a little bit different, but I'll try to put all of this in context so that makes sense, and we'll have plenty of time for questions for everyone. So you can feel free to put your questions in the chat throughout, but probably what will happen is I'll do my best to keep this presentation relatively short so that we have plenty of time for interaction and questions after I go through the slides here. All right, so my name is Bill Frase. I'm Assistant Director of Business Services at Achieva. So I've been in the field of disability employment services and supports for over 17 years now. And all of those years have been at Achieva. I've had many roles over those years, different roles. I've been what you might call an employment specialist or a job coach. I've been a trainer. I've been a senior manager of different kinds of programs, mostly like Medicaid waiver funded programs, adult training facilities, and pre-vocational programs and things. And then for quite a few years, I was actually in charge of our supported employment division at Achieva. And then in 2019, I took over this new role with this new initiative, which we call Achieva Business Services. And what we do in this is a little bit different. And that's part of what I'm going to be talking about today, is what we do in Achieva Business Services. And also, we're not the only ones doing this kind of work. So I'll be able to share some information about some other folks that are in this space that may be of interest as well. Let's see a little bit more about me. So I married over 26 years, and as I said before, I do have a son who is in college, and I am the parent and uncle of several folks who identify as autistic or would be considered to be on the autism spectrum. And so I also wear those hats in my life as well, that this issue of particularly autism, but employment and people with disabilities is something that's close to my heart, because I know what employment does, what it can do for people, and what, when employment isn't going well, either through unemployment, underemployment, or well, in some cases overemployment, but where there's just not a good match between a person's circumstances, their desires, their ability to contribute, and what's going on in the employment in the workspace. So hopefully that gives you a sense of where I'm coming from here. All right, so I thought with this conversation here, I would just talk about some of the things that I've seen over the years that are kind of needs or challenges of, and this would be actually in so many ways, a lot of these things are true for all job seekers. Most of them are true for all job seekers, but a lot of them are true definitely for job seekers with disabilities, or with differences in terms of functioning or those kinds of things. So, a big one, and I just alluded to it, is the idea of a good job match. When we've got a relatively good job match between an individual and a position, that sets a person up for success in so many different ways: higher income, better engagement, happiness, just more contribution, and that's where everybody celebrates. Everyone who's involved, if that person has a team, the family, the job seeker, the employer, everyone's happy when there's a good job match where the skills and the qualifications and all those qualities in the job seeker and the job come together with a high degree of harmony and alignment. Accessibility and inclusion, these are things that are oftentimes issues for people with disabilities when they're looking to become employed or stay employed. And we can go into a little bit more detail here, and I'm guessing a lot more in the Q&A section after the presentation here. Job supports and services. Some people are able to, get a job and get another job and just keep getting jobs. Although I've also seen people who are really good at getting jobs, but then where they get stuck is challenges with keeping the job. So sometimes people need job supports on the front end. Sometimes they need it more in the middle, and sometimes people need job supports for those periods of transition, even if it's a promotion or taking a new job or something like that. And again, that's the space that I've been working in here for over 17 years, has been kind of in that job supports and services category. Applications and interviews. A lot of times, and we'll get more into detail in this in terms of the kinds of partnerships that we're doing at Achieva Business Services, but so many people are so challenged by applications. They're online now, they're electronic. They don't, there's all kinds of things that people don't know about the applications that if they knew would actually increase their chances of getting an interview. So there's all of that, which is something that we help with, and I'll go into more detail about. And then interviews, maybe you get through the application, you've taken care of that part, but then there are issues with the interview where a different interview format may work for you. Maybe the employer tends to use a panel of interviewers, and for some people that is just, it's overwhelming, it's too much, and that can apply to all kinds of different disabilities or situations that people have. Or they run their interviews a particular way, and that's not really going to work for the person. And that's one of the things that excites me about the projects that we're doing with our partnerships, is that we're helping people both at the application stage and the interview stage. Okay, more about that later. Disclosure and accommodations, another big question, particularly I think for a lot of folks who are on the spectrum, when do I disclose? How do I disclose? And then, what kinds of accommodations may I need at the application stage, at the interview stage, during onboarding, in my position, these kinds of things. Having help and support with those and another perspective can be really helpful, because a lot of employers, particularly like hiring managers and supervisors, they're not well versed in things like disclosure and accommodations. So knowing that you have another resource available to you for those, for help with those kinds of issues can be huge, both in terms of getting a job, even getting an opportunity to have a shot at a job, getting a job, and then, getting onboarded and trained and having retention and even potential advancement in jobs over time. And I threw in, bias and discrimination here, because it's just, when we're talking about differences, all kinds of different differences, including disability or neurodiversity, these things are going to crop up, and they're things that oftentimes we need help with. Sometimes there's things we can do about them through education and relationship building, and sometimes those things can be challenging to deal with. But that's part of what we're going to talk about here is how we address some of these needs that are pretty common for job seekers. All right, so I wanted to create a context here. So I listed a whole bunch of things on this slide that are some of the things that people get help with, or services or supports, or things that help people to get jobs. So, networking is something that that a lot of people use to help them get a job in the first place, because having someone who knows you, who knows someone who has a job, it can be huge. It's how I got my first job when I was in high school, was, the local landscaper, knew my dad, asked him if I wanted a job, and I went over and he gave me a job, and I had that job for 4 summers, helped me pay for college and everything. And that was, I didn't even network, it was just my parents' network that got leveraged for my benefit, and so, and again, I'm just putting what we do at Achieva Business Services with our embedded inclusion liaison model kind of in this context of all these different things. Placement programs, whether it's through, high school or college, or these different kinds of programs that just are all about helping someone get their foot in the door at a business. Apprenticeships and internships can be really helpful to bridging that gap. The Office of Vocational Rehabilitation has lots of different services and supports that can help people bridge the gap between where they are as a job seeker and where they want to get to in their career and employment journey. Related to that, one of the services that they offer, and that's available through other funding streams and things too, is supported employment. There's many different forms and types of supported employment. The idea is that, services and supports that meet someone where they are to help them bridge whatever gaps they have between their current situation and improving their employment situation, whatever that means for them, whether it's help with applying for jobs, with interviews, on-the-job training supports, and even supports over the long term to check in and support both the employer and the employee at that point. I put it in job carving here. This will be a little bit relevant later. Just it's the idea that sometimes people are able to maybe they're able to do 80% of a job, but there's 20% of the essential functions that a person's just like, I can't do that, or it doesn't make sense for me to do that, or whatever. And sometimes those kinds of things are able to be done. A lot of times that's done through receiving supported employment supports. Another word for it is also just job restructuring, or restructuring a position to work for someone that makes it work better for someone and makes a win-win for the employer and the employee by separating out job functions. And then I put on here customized employment too, which is really, it's really about getting to know a job seeker really, really well, and then looking for unmet needs in the community of that job seeker that that particular individual could fulfill. And and there are some people that it's really best for people with really, I'll call it, complex support situations where people have a lot of what I'll call requirements for the job, things that they have to be a certain way in order for the job to work, and certain things that if they're not there, that the person's not going to be able to succeed. So customized employment is sort of that really highly developed way of getting to know people, and then developing very specifically designed positions, not looking for existing job openings, but really developing new things. And so I just wanted to create this context to then talk a little bit about how we're pulling from some of these different things in our supports that's a bit different than maybe a lot of people have experienced out there. All right. So the model that we have at Achieva is called an embedded inclusion liaison. And so what this person is, and I've got it in the bullets, they are a disability employment professional. A lot of times they've worked as an employment specialist like I have, or in similar kinds of positions in workforce development. And what's really different and unique about this is this idea that they are embedded within a specific employer, that they get to know that organization in terms of their recruiting, their hiring, their systems and their processes, their culture, the mindset, so what they've done, I mean, one way to look at this is in the context of supported employment, there's this thing called job development, which is helping to connect people with specific positions or developing new positions for them, like I talked about with job carving or customized employment. So what an embedded inclusion liaison is doing is really getting to know the employer and their positions and their systems and processes really well in order to support job seekers with becoming employed with those specific employers. So these are employers who are saying, we want to hire more people, in our case, people with disabilities. This model could be applied to all kinds of different populations. Our focus at Achieva is disabilities, so that's our focus. And so it's a very unusual form of partnership, because in these models, just to give you some idea of how the relationships work, I am the direct supervisor of an embedded inclusion liaison, this single professional who's inside a corporate partner and supporting the recruitment, the retention, and the advancement of people with disabilities within that employer, within what you could call the host employer or organization. So they're on our payroll. I support them, but they have access to that employer partners, human resources systems, talent acquisition systems, and things, so that they can help to bridge the gap between people who want to work at that organization and help them get to that place of becoming an employee and all of that. Now, the other things that the liaison does too, this embedded inclusion liaison, it's not just about recruitment and hiring. They also help people, like with a lot of those things I said in the beginning, with disclosure, with accommodations, with things that might help them retain their position over time. So that's why I have on here acts as a single point of contact. That means that they're a single point of contact for the employer for all things disability employment related. And they're also a single point of contact for all of the employees for anything disability employment related. So they're kind of like one-stop shopping, where maybe they can help people themselves, or a lot of times what they're doing is, because they know the organization and they're networked throughout the organization, they can help connect people to the resources and tools that they need in order to succeed in that position. All right, so I'm now at the place where I just want to highlight the two organizations that we are currently partnered with at Achieva Business Services, where we have inclusion liaisons embedded within each of these organizations. The one organization is Giant Eagle, and the other is UPMC. And let me see here. I'm trying to think what I want to say about that. And part of the challenge is that each of these inclusion liaisons, it's like they're operating their own disability employment program within each of these employers. Giant Eagle is a very different employer from UPMC. They hire people of different ages. For example, high school students can work there in a couple of different positions, and they have all kinds of different ways that they go about things. And with UPMC, some of the differences are, for example, our inclusion liaison is empowered to help anyone in the state of Pennsylvania access UPMC positions, whereas in Giant Eagle, we're pretty much limited to Southwestern Pennsylvania in helping people connect with Giant Eagle opportunities. But with UPMC, the liaison there has the opportunity to help people access positions throughout the entire network, based on the locations that are available in Pennsylvania. So yeah, I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of questions about those things, and some other stuff might come to me here, but I think I'm going to move on with some more details here. Okay, so EILs, that's just abbreviation for Embedded Inclusion Liaison. So at Achieva, we have two. We have one person in UPMC and one person in Giant Eagle. And so the way that they help is, one way is through better job matches, by really getting to know those employers and their positions, and the hiring managers and the talent acquisition people. They have a chance of kind of helping to steer people away from jobs that just are not a good match, oftentimes from a skill perspective, but there could be other factors involved too that don't show up on a job description. They can help with accessibility issues at any stage in the process, if there are any. What we do too is that, like, even though our embedded inclusion liaisons have often worked as job coaches or employment specialists, and they have the certifications to do that work, what they typically do is, if someone needs supports on the job, then we will help those folks by partnering with their job support. Say they have a job coach or some other kind of support. We'll partner with them. We don't compete. We're all about the same thing here. We want more people with disabilities, working in our employer partners. And so we work together with not only job seekers, but with their entire team to make sure that everything that that job seeker, hopefully to become an employee, needs, not only to start on the right foot in a job, but also to continue successfully. Let's see. All right, so applications and interviews. This is something that our inclusion liaisons help a lot of folks out with. One thing that I will say is, because a lot of times people will be like, well, should I check in with the inclusion liaison, after I've applied for a position? And generally speaking, I would suggest that you connect with the inclusion liaison before applying for a position, because what often happens is that if people apply and they don't apply the knowledge that the inclusion liaison has to a position, then those applications get kicked out, and and it's like starting over, or sometimes it's worse than starting over because you have to kind of undo what happened before in the process. So it's best to work with the inclusion liaison, if at all possible, before applying for positions. But that shouldn't prevent anyone from reaching out to them, even if they have applied for positions, because a lot of times they can still help, but sometimes the help that they can offer may be limited. And our inclusion liaisons, oftentimes they're advocating with talent acquisition people. They're advocating with hiring managers in order to even make sure that people are fully considered for positions and taken seriously as candidates for those positions. So there's all kinds of advocacy work that goes on behind the scenes with the employer. But, for them to do that, they have to get to know the job seeker pretty well in order to say, I feel like this person would be really good. So while they have a lot of knowledge of the employer, they're also working individually, one-on-one with each job seeker that they're working with to try to make those connections with the employer. All right, disclosure and accommodations. So again, this is something that the inclusion liaisons help a lot with. I mean, we have forms that when people come on board with us, when job seekers come on board with us, where, we let them know by working with us and everything, in a way, you're just automatically disclosing that you're a person with a disability, because that's how we can work with folks, given our particular mission and goals and everything. We don't disclose specifics or anything like that, but by coming in kind of through the door of the embedded inclusion liaison, a person is automatically saying, hey, I'm a person with a disability. That's all they're saying. It doesn't say anything else than that. But again, these are employers that are very interested in having a more diverse workforce, hiring more people with disabilities, retaining more people, and advancing more people with disabilities in their organization. And also helping with coordinating accommodations or things like that if that's necessary. And again, like I alluded to before, some of the accommodations could be adjustments to the interview process that would be more supportive of giving someone a real good opportunity at being considered for a position. And then something else is this retention and advancement piece. So our business partners are very interested in not only hiring people with disabilities, but having them retained, having them stay on for as long as possible, and not necessarily just staying on in the same position, but in advancing more people with disabilities in the organization. So that's something else that the inclusion liaisons are doing, is that they're not only available to people to help and support them, but they're also actively reaching out and reconnecting with people that they've served and worked with over the past number of months or years to check in on them and with their employer and everything, to make sure that people are on track and that they're taking advantage of advancement opportunities and things like that. All right. Okay, so I wanted to give this information, and we're in the home stretch here on the presentation part, and then we can go to questions and everything. So what we do is free to the job seeker if there's any questions about that. Our services are paid for through different means. In some cases, the employers cover our expenses, or we're using other types of funding in order to make sure that our services remain free to the job seeker and the employees of our business partners. And one of the things I wanted to mention is that there are other organizations with people who are in similar roles. And so the two that I'm aware of, and these are both, as far as I know, in the Pittsburgh market.
Over there on that stand.
And yeah, if folks could mute, please. That would be really helpful. Make sure you're muted, please. Thank you. So the other organizations that are doing similar work are the University of Pittsburgh and People's Gas in Pittsburgh as well. And a lot of these projects are related to kind of the original inspiration and impetus for this, which came out of the United Way's 21 and Able project back in, I think, 2013. And so there's an embedded inclusion liaison at People's Gas that's helping them in a similar way to what we do with Giant Eagle and UPMC. And then the University of Pittsburgh has had someone in this role for quite a few years. And that person now is actually, I believe, employed by the University of Pittsburgh, which is a different, so they used to be people more like connected with an agency like Achieva, supervised by someone like myself. And now this is someone who's actually part of HR, and their role is specific, I believe, to veterans and persons with disabilities. And so I just wanted to mention this information. I'm going to have my contact information in the slides coming up here, where you can either contact me individually or my team as a whole. And so, you know, if anyone's interested in those contacts, if you email me, I'll be happy to, you know, to get you the information so that you can get in contact with those folks if connecting with either of those employers makes sense for anyone. Let's see. Yeah, on the funding front, I just wanted to mention that it's kind of what I said before. We don't compete for funding with other providers. If people are, you know, if they're working with providers and say supported employment providers, that's what I'm most familiar with, where they've got a job coach who's helping them. We partner with the Jobseeker, with their employment specialists and all that in order to make good job matches. So now sometimes when we'll do an intake with someone for Achieva Business Services, it'll be clear to us from the intake that we feel like this person would benefit from additional supports that are beyond what we do at Achieva Business Services. And so we may refer people and help them get connected with funding. Oftentimes the most common funding partner we'll use to help people get additional supports beyond what we do in Achieva Business Services, particularly supported employment job coaching services. We'll help them connect with OVR to get that funding, so that once they have that, then we can move forward in helping them get a job, because we feel like they have the supports around them that are going to give them the best chance of succeeding in that position. And one of the last things I wanted to put on here, because sometimes, and I've seen some comments here that, you know, what we're doing either because of geographic reasons or the organizations that we're working with is not necessarily for everyone. And my hope is that, you know, eventually that would not be the case, that more organizations would sign on to these partnerships, whether they did it with Achieva or with other disability employment service providers like Achieva. But this is not, I think all of you have probably figured this out already. This is not one size fits all. This is not something that's for everyone. For example, if someone needs job carving, that's not something that we typically do in these partnerships, because what we're looking at is it's an employer-led kind of initiative. So the employer is saying, these are the positions we're looking to hire, help us fill these positions. And so job carving, customized employment, people who need those kinds of things, that's this kind of embedded inclusion liaison project is not going to be for those the folks in those situations. What we're doing is, and again, our employer partners have part-time, full-time positions, different kinds of positions and things, but we're not changing or restructuring those positions in these kinds of partnerships. So that would be a big difference between what we do and, say, customized employment or supported employment, where there's a job restructuring or job carving kind of component to it. So let's see. Okay, yep, we're in home stretch. I just wanted to mention this for everyone that's here, because we also have the ability to do disability employment inclusion training for groups and organizations. And this is one way that we're trying to help more organizations understand. All right, I'll put the training this way. Oftentimes, employers or hiring managers or supervisors, they lack the confidence in their own skills and abilities to work successfully with people with disabilities. And this training is really, it's not only designed for that, but that was kind of the original inspiration for this training. So the curriculum that we use is called Windmills. And the training modules, I have 12 training modules. Most of them I can offer virtually in a Zoom format like this, or I can do them in person. But they're meant to help employers increase both their competence and their confidence with regard to hiring, retaining, training, supporting people with disabilities in their organization. And so there are 4 main categories of information that we train on with these different modules that can be delivered. The modules are like an hour long. They can be delivered in all kinds of different formats, lots of flexibility, but they cover things like attitudes and bias, which is, as we know, a large barrier still, even though progress is being made, hiring and employment, supervisory issues, and information about specific disabilities. So, you know, if you or an organization you're connected to might be interested in getting this kind of, I'll call it disability employment inclusion education. And these are live experiential things. They're not pre-recorded. They're meant to be conversations with activities that help people to learn things about themselves and about other people that they might not otherwise know. But if you or anyone's interested in more information about that, feel free to reach out directly to me. My contact information will be coming shortly here. And yeah. And all right, if there are other questions, I'll take those later. Okay, so here's the contact information. So if after this you have any questions, anything at all, this is my contact information. That's my phone number and my email. Feel free to reach out to me anytime after this presentation with any questions or ideas, suggestions, whatever you would like to share. I would love to hear from you and see what I can do to help if that's what you're looking for. All right, and so, and I can bring these back too, but I want to get to this next slide. So we also have, this is the information for the entire business services team, which includes me, several other people, and the 2 inclusion liaisons, the one for Giant Eagle and the one for UPMC at this point. So we have a small team of very capable and smart people and people who really want to help. So this is another way that you can get to us, business services at achieva.info, or through our phone extension. And yeah. All right, so with that said, I'm going to now kind of open it up. And I don't know, Lou, how you typically do these, but I just, I'm going to open it up for questions now, because I'm sure I left a whole bunch of holes out there that people need filled during our time together here. So thank you for your attention.
Hi, this is Mary Healy. Thank you for this presentation. It's been very helpful. I have one question. What sorts of jobs are in fact available at Giant Eagle and at UPMC? Are they just like lower level jobs, or would they be ones, you know, more representative of what the 2 organizations do?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. Yeah, and I thank you. Yeah, excellent question. So what I'll say is it's all positions. So we help those organizations with all their positions. So there's no positions that are quote unquote set aside for the people that we work with or anything, because these organizations understand that talent can come from anywhere. And so it's been described to me that at UPMC, they have almost every kind of job at UPMC, not necessarily job opening, but job except for firefighter, because the firefighting is provided by other places, but they have, UPMC is a massive organization with a wide variety of positions. Giant Eagle is not quite so broad as that, but we're connected with corporate recruiting. So, like most of the positions, honestly, that we're helping Giant Eagle to fill are, I'll call them probably mostly, entry-level positions or positions with some experience. But we're not limited to those. If there are other positions, we're partnered with their corporate recruiting folks and everything to look at, what might be called office positions, but I think most office, quote unquote, office positions work from home now. So I'm not sure exactly what to call them, but I'll just call them corporate positions that way. So thank you so much, Mary, for that question. It's an excellent question. And yeah, so it's at these organizations, it's all of the jobs. And my understanding is in the other organizations that I mentioned that are not Achieva affiliated, but that have embedded inclusion liaisons or people like that, that they also have a similar philosophy, that they're helping people coming from any direction with any level of experience, that, and looking to see what positions they're qualified for and making the best job match possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now, so I'm not okay, the chat here. So I'm just going to look at, I see a question in the chat, and I'm, at this point, I'm really going to apologize for not seeing all the other questions that may have come before that question, but there was a question about, expand on how advocacy works, which is a great question. So I'll talk about that, but again, I'm going to apologize for all the other questions I didn't get. So I'm hoping someone can step in and help me with other questions that I'm missing, because the chat's looking pretty long here. Okay, so advocacy, the way that it works is that by our inclusion liaisons getting to know the employer really well, getting to know the hiring managers, getting to know the positions that they're hiring for to the best of their ability, the qualifications, all of these things. And then by getting to know the job seeker really well, what they're able to do is, that advocacy really comes down to leveraging the relationships that they have with talent acquisition professionals or hiring managers to help make sure that people are given a look. But the advocacy could be related to things like, I'll call them modifications to the interviews, for example, that, okay, for this job, we typically do a panel interview, but this person, based on what we know, what they know about themselves and their team knows, panel interview is probably not going to be great, and it wouldn't necessarily reflect the essential functions of the job. So can we get a different kind of interview format set up that gives this person a better shot at being considered for the position? So that's, advocacy can take all kinds of different forms, but it's really a lot of education, relationship building, helping to just make sure that the people, the job seekers, are getting as much help and support as possible to be considered by the employer. And that advocacy work too, I guess I should say this, can also go in terms of the retention piece as well, like helping people keep their jobs and making sure that employers and everyone involved are leaving no stones unturned that way. All right. So excellent questions. Thank you. Okay. So, so this is a disclosure. If not working with an organization like Achieva, do you in general recommend disclosing a disability prior to or during an interview? When it comes to disclosure, I I think I'll say I can't give general recommendations. What I typically do, and this is something I'd be happy to do in like an individual phone conversation if someone wants to call me or email me to schedule a time. I'll be happy to talk about a person's individual situation. I think there are so many factors to consider in it, and for me, it requires almost a conversation to walk through all the different things that are important to that person. You know, and it could even be related to a specific employer or to a specific job. The thing is that disclosure needs to happen if a person is seeking an accommodation. If you're not seeking an accommodation, then you don't have to disclose. But to the point of this question, I think there can be times where disclosing at different points in the process can be helpful. And again, that's something that for me is very much, I'm happy to have, you know, to talk about the principles and all these things and how they apply to individual circumstances. But I hesitate to give general advice that way because everyone's situation is so unique, and not even just an individual situation, but an individual situation of applying for a specific job or going for an interview at a specific job, where in some cases, you know, it may make sense to do so, to disclose sooner rather than later. In other cases, it may make sense to wait. So yeah, I'm sorry I can't be more specific on that, but my concern is if I was more specific, that that I could be, you know, giving people advice that doesn't really match with individual circumstances that way. All right, I got a question here. What does Pitt offer and who's contact? So yeah, so Pitt's recruiter, the contact there, his name is Tom Armstrong. Again, I would be happy to connect you directly to him because that's his job, is recruiting veterans and people with disabilities. Yeah, he's been doing this work for a long time and is very committed to what he's doing. And Pitt is obviously committed because they've actually brought him on board as staff to help them hire more people, more veterans, more people with disabilities. Yeah, and I've got a question here. Can I refer to a group in the Philly area? So I know that there are many different supported employment and customized employment providers in the Philly area, but I'm not aware of anyone who's doing the kind of embedded inclusion liaison projects in the Philly area that we're doing. So yeah, the closest thing I can think of, and I think, see, and I'm now, if I'm going to go outside of my depth on that. So I don't want to, I want to do that with some more research, but I do believe that there are some employers in the Philly area that are very interested in hiring people with disabilities, and maybe even more specifically, people on the autism spectrum. So if you wanted to reach out to me individually, I could do a little bit more research on that to connect you better, just to make sure that I've got my facts straight on that. But as far as projects like ours, I'm not aware of any in the Philly area, unfortunately. How long have you had the Embed Inclusion Liaisons on staff? Has this effort been successful and experiencing continued growth? Excellent question. So I've been actually working with these kinds of projects since about 2014. And that was when I was in charge of supported employment at Achieva. And we've had a lot of experience helping many people become and stay employed with these projects. So, so I've been working with Embedded Inclusion Liaison since 2014. And then our current partnership in that partnership was Giant Eagle in 2014. So I've been working with Giant Eagle since 2014 with these projects, supervising the embedded inclusion liaisons that have worked there over the years. And yeah, and our efforts have been successful in terms of people getting placed and retaining their positions. And one of the things from a continued growth perspective, I mean, we're always looking as an agency for other employers who would be interested in working with us to help get more people with disabilities, neurodiversity, things like that, employed in their respective organizations. So thank you for that question. And do I know if Google has an embedded inclusion liaison? I'm not aware that they do. That's all I can say about that. I'm not aware that they do. Okay, how would work affect government benefits such as Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? Yeah, so when it comes to those things, I can talk generally about it because I used to be in charge of our Ticket to Work program here at Achieva. That was one of the positions I've had over my 17 years here, where I worked closely with Social Security beneficiaries and really doing my best to help them I call it maximizing their Social Security work incentives so that employment puts people in a better position as opposed to a worse position in terms of both their medical and their cash benefits. So I'm going to leave this really general because I could go down this wormhole really deep on the benefits, but employment may affect those benefits. It's oftentimes related to the level of earnings. And so the resources that I would refer people to for help with those questions would be, they're called CWICs, Community Work Incentive Coordinators. They are around the state of Pennsylvania. There's several across the state of Pennsylvania. And what they do is they're certified to provide Social Security beneficiaries with information related to how employment would impact Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security disability insurance, and also SSI, how employment affects those benefits so that people can make informed decisions regarding employment, and these positions are funded, I believe, from the Social Security Administration. It's related to the Ticket to Work legislation. Anyways, so there are resources that way where what they will do is they will sit down one-on-one with people, look at their benefit situation, look at their actual benefits, getting a report from Social Security called a BPQI, benefit plan inquiry. They'll look at that document, work with the person and help them to understand how employment at different levels of earnings and things could or would affect their benefits so they can make those decisions. So yeah, and again, just anything, like if there's anything specific from the questions here, please email me personally, and I'll get you whatever information you need if you don't already have it for, like, you know, who would be the CWIC, the benefits planning organizations in your area and all of that to really get those questions answered in a way that would, because the whole idea is we want people who are going for employment to feel confident that becoming employed, increasing earnings is going to increase the quality of people's lives. Yeah, so the EIL for People's Gas is Bonnie Rubin. Again, we'd be happy to connect folks with Bonnie who might be interested in working there. And okay, yeah, that's exciting. So yeah, the EIL is Bonnie Rubin, and her employer, I believe, is Bender Consulting. So that's that. So again, I've probably skipped a whole bunch of questions here. I'm not sure. A lot of these came as direct messages. Some went to everyone. So I'm going to scroll up through the questions here. And again, if anyone wants to chime in, you know, to unmute, or okay, can you help people get jobs out of state, like maybe animation? Okay, so typically what we're doing at Achieva is we're working at a more local level. So that's not something that we really do. And I would probably have to think some about the resources and organizations that might be available. There are national organizations that help people with disabilities connect with employment opportunities at a national level. So if someone emailed me about that, I could probably connect you with a few organizations that work that way. But Achieva at this point is very much a local, regional kind of question. So, okay, how would employment affect government benefits, federal and state of PA? Again, I'm going to refer back to the community work incentive coordinators, the CWICs, the benefit planning programs that are in the state of Pennsylvania, where those people are trained and certified to provide very specific information so that people really understand how employment is going to affect their benefits. Yeah, I can put my I had a feeling someone would want to my contact. So I'm going to put my contact information back on the screen for this request. Thank you. I'm working backwards through the questions now. Yeah, Giant Eagle or UPMC, if they're looking for graphic designers, I do not know. What you would need to do is go to their websites and see if they're looking for those kind of positions. And then also if you reached out either to me or my team, the inclusion liaisons would have more of a sense of how often those positions might come open at those organizations. All right, I think I answered that question. Okay, yeah. All right. Sorry, I'm just reading through these questions here. If anyone wants to unmute, just feel free to do so while I'm looking through the questions. Okay, I think I've worked through. Okay, oh, now I've got 4 new messages below. Okay, this is fun. Let me go down.
I see a question. Could you tell us about the intake process?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So the intake process, what we typically do is we'll have an initial conversation with anyone who's interested in working with us, who's interested in working with our particular business partners, to get a sense if what we're doing makes sense for them at this stage, and where there's a possibility for a match being made. So we'll have a general conversation about that, kind of get a sense of, does the person feel like they have the supports they need and those kind of things. So after that initial conversation, if an intake makes sense, because we don't want to do intakes if folks need other supports in order to get started or things like that. So but once we do the intake, we actually do these, well, it depends. We can do them online. We do a lot of them online over the Zoom platform, where what we do is we'll actually send our packet of fillable PDFs to the individual, where they can fill them out and then send them back to us with a lot of the information. But we'll have a conversation working through our intake form where we get a lot of the information we need that's going to help us begin the process of seeing, okay, what are some possible job matches for this individual, either now or in the future if those positions aren't open, so that we're ready when a new position does come open. And so those intakes typically happen, it's usually just the inclusion liaison and the job seeker, and whoever the job seeker wants to invite to those meetings, kind of from a person-centered perspective. So whoever that person wants to bring, they're welcome to come and contribute to the meeting if the job seeker wants them there. And yeah, and so we'll send out the paperwork ahead of time, have the meeting. A lot of times people send us the paperwork, the completed paperwork after that conversation. And then our inclusion liaison will work with the individual, in terms of either applications if we're at that stage, or tweaking the resume, or those kinds of things that are going to be needed to bridge the gap between where the person is and where they're trying to get with the employer. So our inclusion liaisons do some stuff that an employment specialist or job coach might do, but where one of the lines that we draw is we're not going to be providing those on site job coaching services as someone needs those. Yeah, and I have here, yeah, Nancy McMillan at Achieva is great, talking about benefits and work. That's true, and actually we have someone who's also, yeah, Nancy's a great resource, and we also have someone else at the Achieva Family Trust as well, Lori Zola, who's really knowledgeable about how work and benefits impact. So that's another possible resource as well. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to the other slide information. So this is the email for the team. So this is a way, if you want to bypass me and go straight to my team, here it is. So this is the workaround for Bill. I do my best to be responsive to people, but sometimes things happen, or I am just one person. So I wanted everyone here to have access to both of our information. All right, so do you have anything for a person with ASD who has a paralegal professional certificate? All right, so I don't have the specific answer to that question. What I would do with that is I would be interested in checking with my inclusion liaisons to see, at least in terms of the programs that we do, what positions there might be that way. And my guess is that there might be, well, no, I can't even guess. There could be positions at Giant Eagle that come open from time to time that are looking for that kind of certification, or, excuse me, or UPMC. I mean, UPMC is obviously a large organization with more diverse positions. So I couldn't say specifically, but again, feel free to reach out to the business services team with those questions, and we'll get back to you and see what we can do to help, if anything. And if we don't have anything either now, or we don't anticipate anything with our business partners, we might be able to refer people to other organizations or resources that might make sense, but particularly in Southwest Pennsylvania. But again, I am aware of some national resources and some other resources that could give people inroads to employment opportunities that way. All right. So I think I've worked my way through all of the questions I've seen in the chat. So do we have other questions?
Anybody want to unmute and ask? Do you anticipate other employers?
Yeah, so at this point, what we're doing, we continue to connect with employers, reach out to employers, educate employers in terms of what we do. And so we would like to bring on other business partners. And again, there's the embedded inclusion liaison model is it's pretty intensive. There's a lot to it, but there are ways that we can partner with employers that are maybe work at different scales and things like that, like what I would call a dedicated disability recruiter kind of position or things like that. So it's a long way of saying that we're talking to different organizations, but it's kind of a long process to develop the trust and the rapport that's needed with any corporate partner for them to work with us in this really intensive, I'll use the word even intimate kind of partnership that we have, where one of our staff is almost like one of their staff, even though they're not their staff. So that has created challenges and things, with these partnerships in some cases, either from a legal or an HR perspective, where those things need to be worked out. So I don't have any other businesses coming online immediately, but we're always working to build those partnerships and develop those relationships that could ultimately lead to more partners, more organizations that are really standing up and saying, yeah, we want to hire more people with disabilities, more experience, more diversity in our workforce. Yeah, do I have any of the names of national resources that was just discussed? I don't really work with them much, so no, I don't have the names off the top of my head. I would have to go through my email and pull out some of those organizations that I'm aware of that kind of operate at that national scale for folks, which I'm happy to do, but I don't have it in front of me at this point. I would have to do a little bit of research to get back to folks on that, which I'm happy to do if you send me an email or.
Yeah, or we can email everybody just generally after this.
Okay. Yeah.
I also want to say, I know that you guys have helped me out when people are having work stress, when they're having some personal improvement plans, different kind of things happening, that we could at least give advice or resources on. People that need accommodations and don't know how to ask, don't know what kind of accommodations they might think about. So yeah, we've done some of that kind of just off the sort of formal relationship support if people need that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we're here to help. So, and that's one of the beauties of business services. There are some disability service, I'll say disability employment service providers that really, they need to bill. I mean, they need to get paid for everything they do in order to kind of pay their bills and all of that. Thankfully, at Achieve Business Services at this point, I mean, I have the flexibility and the ability to right, to do exactly what Lou's talking about, where people call or email looking for information, resources, or support. Yeah, we do that kind of thing all the time, even if it's not directly related to our business partners, because this is what we do, and if we're not here to help the people who want help, then what's the point? So yeah, no, we're very happy to do that at any time. Yeah, because
there's also a related question. Do you help people to get jobs with other employers? For example, someone finds a job opportunity. Will you help with resume preparation and mock interviews or other services to help a person get the job?
Okay. Yeah, it's an excellent question. So this whole discussion tonight has been in the context of Achieva Business Services. What I'm going to talk about now is our, I'll call it our sister division, which is competitive integrated employment at Achieva. So this is the division that I used to be in charge of. It's what I referred to as supported employment. And so in supported employment, yes, what'll typically happen in those cases is that they could get a referral from the State Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, OVR, get a referral, say, for job mentoring or for supported employment. And then what would happen in those situations is the intake would happen, and then an employment specialist would be assigned to work with the job seeker on whatever things are needed to help them get jobs. And while our competitive integrated employment or supported employment division at Achieva, they partner with us in Achieva Business Services. They aren't just limited to our two business partners. They are supporting people in dozens of different, with dozens of different employers throughout their footprint of operation. Just to be clear, because this may be important, because this, I'm not sure where people are coming from geographically. So their footprint of operation is Allegheny County, Westmoreland County, and Beaver County at this point. So those are the counties that Achieva CIE, or Competitive Integrated Employment, could help people with. And then if you're in a different geography, then there would be different providers in those geographic areas. And for example, what do I want to call it? The local OVR district offices would be aware of who the providers are of those services in people's respective geographies if a person doesn't happen to be in that specific footprint. So yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, very, very much related to what we do at Achieva Business Services. But again, they're oftentimes providing those supports that are a bit beyond what we do in Achieva Business Services for a lot of our job seekers, although there is some overlap. For example, help with resumes, applications, and yeah, our inclusion liaisons for our partners, they'll do mock interviews with people to help them get ready for interviews and things too. So excellent question, thank you.
Questions or ideas? Bill, you're like a walking encyclopedia of employment information. And sorry, I lost all my buttons for a minute, so I couldn't let people back in, and I couldn't even turn the Zoom off. Here's a question. Who should we contact first, CIE or your group?
Okay. So what you could do is, so with my group at Achieva, you can, again, contact me, or you can contact the business services group in general. It goes to a group inbox so that any of us can work with that. And then when it comes to CIE, competitive integrated employment, supported employment at Achieva, the person in charge of that area, his name is Lowell King. So he's an assistant director like myself. So you could reach out to him, but I'm also, like I said, we're sort of sister divisions or whatever, sibling divisions. So, if you reach out to me and say, hey, Bill, I didn't catch the name or whatever, could you get me connected with Achieva CIE? I'd be happy to make that contact. It's typically as simple as, doing an email introduction for folks to get connected that way. So I'm happy to make those connections as well. I mean, people can also call the Achieva main number, the 412-995-5000 number, dial 0 for the receptionist, and say, hey, I need to talk to someone in competitive integrated employment or supported employment. And well, they may send you to me, given that I was in charge of that area for a while, and not everyone necessarily knows exactly what I'm doing now. Oftentimes I get those voicemails, or they'll send you over to Lowell in that area. So yeah, so thank you for that question. Okay, yeah, if it became necessary, do you guys help with getting through to OVR? So yeah, we both in Achieva Business Services and Competitive Integrated Employment, we work very closely with our friends at OVR. And so if there are challenges or issues, disconnects, connection, communication issues, I'll just throw everything in that basket. Yeah, oftentimes we can help because we actually have a liaison relationship with OVR, not an embedded inclusion liaison, but we have an OVR staff person that we have as a single point of contact for questions and things that we can contact to help people who might get stuck or who have fallen through the cracks through no fault of their own with OVR. So yeah, we're happy to help and assist in those situations, particularly I will say when it comes to the local OVR offices that we work with, Johnstown, Newcastle, Pittsburgh. I'm not saying that we can't do anything for people with other district offices, but those are the ones where we have the strongest relationships, obviously, given that we work with them regularly. So, there's Lowell. Okay, I see it in the chat. Thank you. Yep. All right. Yeah, excellent questions. These questions have been great. I knew that there were things that I didn't share that would be really helpful for people to know. So, yeah. Had a good exchange with OVR recently, left a message for a return call and it came quickly. Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, as with anything in this world, it all comes down, in my experience, to individual people. That there are some folks that are just super duper responsive and all that, and other folks not so much. And so, but we'll do whatever we can to help. Would Ticket to Work help pay for daycare for a therapy dog while client is working? Okay, so, oh boy. See, Ticket, yeah. All right. So the Ticket to Work program, oh boy, yeah. I mean, there's so much going through my head right now on Ticket to Work. And again, I've been out of the Ticket to Work game for several years now. So I want to answer this question without taking a half hour to answer it. I will just say that, okay, how do I want to put this? It all depends on the employment network. When we operated as an employment network, that we needed the payments that Social Security paid us for achieving outcomes in order to cover our expenses for the program. There could be employment networks where that's part of their part of what they do. And now what I would say is daycare for therapy dog. Okay, dog while client is working. Yeah, see, and I would have to yeah, and what I would suggest with that question is that that's probably it's probably a question that's best left for, I'm going to put it back on the CWICs, the Community Work Incentive Coordinators across the state of Pennsylvania, because see, they're aware of all of the different Social Security work incentives. And there are these things called impairment-related work expenses. IRWEs, I think. Yeah, impairment-related work. Yeah, IRWEs, impairment-related work expenses. I'm not sure if that would qualify as an IRWE or not, but they would know, and that can actually be looked up in things like Social Security's Red Book. It's a free PDF online. They update them every year. I assume there's a 2021 one. I haven't looked, where that question might actually be answered in that document online. But yeah, I wouldn't, the more likely way to go is that it wouldn't be Ticket to Work that would pay for that. Most likely where someone would get help would be through the existing Social Security work incentives, whether it's impairment related work expense or some other way that people can kind of deduct from their earnings those things. And like, I'll just tell this story just to give people an idea. I worked with someone years ago. She used a wheelchair to get around, and she had all kinds of expenses, medications, therapies, things related to her wheelchair. Like, she had all these expenses that if she didn't have these expenses, she could not work at her job. And so what Social Security did with those was that they actually deducted those expenses from the income that they counted for her. And so like, those expenses reduced her income by about, I don't know if it was half, I think it was pretty darn close. It was a significant reduction in her earnings, her countable earnings, which then she was a Social Security disability SSDI recipient, which then meant that her income fell below what's called substantial gainful activity, which is the level that Social Security uses to determine if someone is, what's the word, financially self-sufficient or something along those lines. So because of her IRWEs, those impairment-related work expenses, she turned in those receipts with her paychecks, with her pay receipts every month to Social Security. And she never triggered, as far as I can recall, her, what do I want to call it, her trial work months, which is another work incentive that's part of SSDI. So she never triggered those because of those expenses. And so I appreciate that question, because even though I can't answer the specific question, one thing that so many people don't understand is that there are so many work incentives that are built into Social Security that are just not even, people they're just not aware of them. They don't know that they exist. And because they don't know they exist, and they don't use them. And oftentimes they lose a cash benefit when they could have kept it, or things like that. Yeah, so yeah, I would go to the CWIC, the Community Work Incentive Coordinator, for that specific information. And again, it would be in the context of Social Security work incentives. Most likely Ticket to Work would not pay for that kind of support for the therapy dog while the person's working in that specific context. So I hope that information is helpful. Okay, I've worked with OVR before and it was not very successful. Is it hard to get connected to them again if necessary? Yeah, so that's an excellent question. Lots of people have had that experience. I will say, unfortunately, that's been my experience. And so it's typically pretty easy to get reconnected with OVR, because basically OVR, the door is always open. Like, even if a case is closed in the past, it can be reopened, oftentimes with a phone call to the district office to say, hey, I need help and I'd like to reopen my case. So yeah, and oftentimes people don't realize like that they can ask for a new counselor, or if things aren't working, or there's that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's pretty easy to do. And again, that's something that sometimes we help people with, where they're like, gosh, I had a rough time with OVR in the past, with their particular counselor or whatever, and they're hesitant. And so sometimes we help to, bridge those contacts and help people get reconnected with OVR. But I also encourage people to do it on their own, because that kind of thing happens all the time for all kinds of different reasons. Sometimes the job seeker just stops responding, you know, sometimes it's, who knows, there's so many different ways that these things can go, but the OVR door, it's kind of like a, I don't know, yeah, it's always open for people to re-engage if they haven't engaged for some time, and as far as I know, for pretty much any reason. Yeah, so that's an excellent question. Thank you. I'm going to take another drink here. Do we have other questions? Now I'm wondering if we got, okay, so I'm going to do the stop share now. I think that's enough of that.
I've lost all my buttons again, so if I can't do something, it's not because I don't care.
Lost your buttons. Oh, that's rough.
They disappear.
Wait, okay, I think something. Yeah, I'm fine with the PowerPoint being email. That's totally fine. Actually, yeah, yeah, Lou has the PowerPoint already, so.
I
yeah.
do. We can send it
Yep,
out to
no
work.
top secret stuff on there. It's all free and available to the public. So
Right.
I love those questions. Usually don't get requests for my PowerPoint, so thank you. You made my evening.
I think we might be out of questions. And if people are like me, you'll think of one in the middle of the night, but that's what email or phone calls are.
Yes, email me.
Yep.
You know, I mean, now, you know, I may not get back to you right away, so just, you know, give me some time. But I always respond to all those emails as soon as I can. Although I may may not be able to be as responsive as I would like, depending on everything else that's going on at any given time. But I will respond to your emails if you email me, for sure. Yeah.
I'm always impressed with the volume of work that you all do and how many people are working like related to your job. So thank you so much for being here. And again, our walking encyclopedia of employment and supports and programs. And so people feel free to email Bill, call him. You can Facebook message us, Autism Connection. We communicate any way that people need to. So don't be shy about that.
Yep,
and
for sure.
Best wishes with your employment search or your new jobs or thinking about jobs. And we're just always here to help you out. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll
so
give you a
much
whole
for
like
having me.
a whole ASL applause. People can wave. But I know you're still all awake. There you go. We're good. Thanks, Valerie. Everybody have a good night. You think you're all set, Bill?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm actually gonna save the transcript here as well while I'm at it, just to make sure I got it. So yeah, I think I'm good to go.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.